Hello, welcome to the Health In Show, an affiliate program of Homeopathy World Community. You've come to the right place to tune in and participate with your comments and questions. Love is the greatest healer of all, but sometimes, in order to change our emotions, we must take action in other spheres of our lives. We speak with experts in alternative and complementary health fields and hope you will benefit in some small or great way. Remember, you are wherever your thoughts are. Make sure your thoughts are where you want to be. Wishing everyone a beautiful, sunny, gorgeous day, March 31, 2014, the last day of this month. We're heading into April, and with us today is Lise Battaglia. She is a registered, certified Bach flower practitioner, and that's why we're going to get it straight, the real thing today. I want to wish everybody a beautiful day, and Amnon, thank you for last-minute preparations for today's show. I'm going to give you a little background, and we're going to get started. For those folks who are on the Health In, NissanCommunications.com, Health In, you can get onto the chat and talk with us. You can call in 919-518-9773 or via Skype at Computers 2K Voice with your questions, your comments, your praise, whatever it is that you have to mention. The use of Bach flower essences, and I'm going to be corrected if it's pronounced Bach, so you'll let me know. And we also want to let you know that Lise is a homeopath, Bach flower essences practitioner, professional chef, whose unique blend of modalities brings forth the self-healing in all of her clients. A crisis counselor since 1981, nutritional coach and chef since 1989, Bach flower practitioner since 1995, and homeopathic consultant since 2007. And on Homeopathy World Community, you can read all about her background, full and extensive, because we want to really learn as much as possible. Lise is an official spokesperson and representative of Nelson's Bach. She conducted staff trainings and introductory classes for retail health food stores and community groups in North America. Lise has been a Bach flower practitioner since 1989 and is registered with the center in England. And so go out there right now, run to Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, gather all your friends and tell them this is live. Okay, welcome.
Oh, thank you. It's lovely to be here.
Wonderful to have you.
Thank you.
And we do have a PDF for anybody who wants to follow along. Otherwise, just sit back, relax, and listen. We're going to start with an introduction, and the link is on Homeopathy World Community, and I did put it on the chat here on Nissan Communications. So get started with and tell me the pronunciation.
What are the Bach flower essences?
It is Bach. Okay.
That is the preferred pronunciation of Dr. Bach himself. I slip into saying Dr. Bach all the time. I don't think he's going to come down from heaven and swat us, but it was his preference.
I think it must be a relearning. The more people who switch it over, people will question, what am I supposed to say? Okay.
And I figure, and my feeling is the less things we have to sort of work our way through to understand what we're talking about, the easier it is. So if it's easy to say Bach, it's easy to say Bach.
Okay.
But Dr. Bach, yes. Dr. Bach was a homeopath, bacteriologist, immunologist, and a pretty successful physician in London in the 1920s. And for the homeopaths out there, you might recognize the name from the bowel nosodes, which was a really important component of homeopathic evolution. But he decided to give up homeopathy at some point. And the reason he chose that was because his feeling was, I'd rather focus on what makes people well instead of diseases that we're trying to combat. So it's actually, if we just remember what Debbie said in the beginning of the show, which I thought was an extraordinary lead-in, what we focus on, what we pay attention to, what we think about creates our life experience. And Dr. Batch, actually was trying to bring that into the consciousness of everyone in the early 1920s and 30s. Principally, he discovered 38 flowers that would help to elevate the human soul, allowing us to have a optimal experience on earth and for our psyche, essentially, our spirit, to heal our bodies.
It's a beautiful thought. He really was working at the spiritual level, it sounds like.
I would have to say that that's true.
Mm-hmm. And if you want to make any note about that difference between a little bit deeper, why he left homeopathy working with toxic substances, some, not all, toxic substances that were diluted as a simillimum so that they would not cause harm. What was it there that he was distressed with?
His essential conflict with homeopathy, although he honored Dr. Samuel Hahnemann, and he employed, just wanted to give you, I'm going to come at the question a little bit, with a little bit of prelude, if that's okay. He employed homeopathic principles. He employed the preparation of the remedies in the same way we prepare a homeopathic remedy, with his dilution and succussion. However, instead of focusing on the disease, which keeps us focused, which keeps us creating it through our thoughts, he wanted to focus on the aspects of the soul that expresses itself through disharmony, and that's how you choose the remedies. So there's an aspect, even though it's not simillimum, we're not finding a remedy or a flower that would match the illness. He wants to find and ascribe a flower that will enhance the part of the human soul that's been blocked. Mm-hmm. But you do still have to identify what's blocked, and you still do come at it from a discord or a disharmony or a disease. He doesn't focus, however, on the physical manifestations of disease, but strictly the level at the level of the personality. Let me give you an example.
Okay, good.
I know it's a little different than the way we're used to thinking about things. If I wanted to have a pet shop my entire life, and in my gut I knew that this was my destiny. I love animals. I'm great with animals. It's a natural thing for me, but I don't believe I can do it. I don't believe that I can do it. I believe that other people are better equipped for this. I don't have what it takes. So this is a good example to see, okay, we have an inspiration that comes from a pure place in your heart, which is your desire to have a pet shop, for example. And then you have what we would call a block. That mental chatter, the reasons we look at the world outside of ourselves to determine whether or not we believe we can do what we feel we can do. And so what Dr. Bach would say, there is a flower that will help you relieve the block. And that flower happens to be larch. The flower is called larch. And larch, and I'll give you the exact words of Dr. Bach and how he described the action of the larch flower. For those who do not consider themselves as good or capable as those around them, who expect failure, who feel that they will never be a success, and so do not venture or make a strong enough attempt to succeed. Imagine having those kinds of ideas about yourself relieved so that your true calling can come through and you can listen to yourself more clearly, and your soul's guidance you can follow with relief and comfort.
It sounds beautiful. I also feel personally that homeopathy does address the similar issues. But I think having the Bach flower essences is really a wonderful adjunct and something for a practitioner to have in their toolbox. So, why don't
I would
we
agree.
go
I would
ahead?
agree 100% with that. I agree 100% with you, Debbie. Uh, there seems to be a kind of idea that Bach is anti-homeopathy or homeopathy is anti-Bach, and I don't practice homeopathy like that. I feel the two have very strong roles to play in a person's ability to heal themselves.
So, when you have a client, you're looking for a homeopathic remedy, and you also give them other things.
Yes, and this is an interesting topic because so much of homeopathic training and inspiration of late has been strongly focused on the emotional and what we call the mind symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was studying, I would jot down Bach flower essences in the margin because it made sense. One of my initial ways of sort of organizing people's experience was through the Bach flowers. There are 38 flowers in the system. It was designed as a self-help system, and it's only focused on the symptoms that show up in the personality. It could be, and those symptoms can be things like, um, impatience, depression out of nowhere, feelings of uncleanliness, exhaustion. So these are all these are all wonderful symptoms to be addressed by homeopathy. Yet Bach flower essences are able to give people a chance that they're on their own without interrupting a homeopathic remedy, which is very important to recognize. They can treat themselves at home. If they're having a bad day and they're exhausted, they can take olive. It
Mm-hmm.
becomes part of your toolkit, almost like an emotional first aid kit. But they do not interact with homeopathy in a negative way. They will not antidote a homeopathic remedy.
I could see how parents and even, I don't know, teachers couldn't do it, but parents with children who are hyperactive, attention deficit, autism, or even asthma, that the flowers are so gentle that they could be useful.
Anytime there's an emotional component it leads to a physical symptom, such as an asthma attack, I think that's what you're getting at, or a little too hyper from something that might have happened at school, Bach flower essences are a wonderful thing to have at home. No question about it.
We have a lot of things going on in the chat. Down here, Ashok says dopamines are ultimates of a mental state which precedes it. I guess he's talking about the changes in the moods and the emotions. Gabrielle says you need adrenaline for reaction so that your body can work. Yes, we do need it. Absolutely. We have the fight or flight response. But it has to be appropriately used, and not, fly off the handle kind of thing. So that's where it tempers it. Is that what it would do?
It doesn't work biochemically.
It doesn't work biochemically.
So I work with a lot of clients who have what we're now calling dopamine issues. So there are lots of ways to sort of slay that dragon. Many of us have problems with hormonal issues regarding dopamine and serotonin creation, and we medicate ourselves. But that's still at the level of palliation. That's still at the level of, it's not at the root level. What Dr. Bach was offering was an opportunity for us to understand how our soul's calling, our highest vibrational expression on earth, how that gets interfered with. It could be bad upbringing, it could be environment, it could be bad diet. How do you identify what's wrong with the soul? And he was able to discover, at the level of the personality, we can start to enter into our spirit. And the vibrations of the human spirit, when they become interfered with, we get cranky, we get selfish, we get angry, become afraid, we become overly concerned about other people, we care more about others than ourselves. And these qualities, when they are harmonized with the flower, not affecting your biochemistry, not interfering with your adrenaline that's protective for you, or your dopamine that helps its own way of giving you motivation to move on and find a kind of chemical peacefulness within your body, the Bach flowers actually go deeper and in a gentle, kind way so that you're not disturbed by having your spirit, quote unquote, harmonized or balanced. It's definitely not a sledgehammer kind of modality. And I can give an example. Does that answer the question a little
Yes,
bit?
I think you're doing great and you're stimulating a lot of conversation. I'm not going to be able to tell you everything that's going on in the chat, but they are having a conversation about that aspect of biochemical pathways and the brain, and conversations about, well, is everything that we are in our brain, or
Wow.
is it beyond that? So there's a great conversation going on in there. Just type your name in and you can participate in that. Don't forget, you also can call in to 919-518-9773 or on Skype at Computers2K Voice. I don't know whether we're going to totally trash our PDF today and just talk, because this is working out just so well. Talking about more in-depth and more heart and soul information than historically and definitions and things like that.
Well, I'm happy to go with the flow. This is exciting to me that people are so stimulated by this, because one of the kinds of feedback that as practitioners that we get are people saying things like, I'm incorporating this into my practice. This is so radical. I can't believe this has been that easy. And I'm going to give a few. How about I give a few case studies that are off the top of my head about kinds of things that the way it affects people in their lives.
That's awesome.
Okay, great. Let me just give a little prelude. Basically, they're little bottles of essences. It's not very different from a homeopathic remedy. It's a liquid. So I don't want people to thinking that they have to use twigs and barley and brew up teas and all that kind of stuff. All this is manufactured. All the original flowers come from the original locations that Dr. Bach found the wild plants and flowers. And they're in a little bottle. They're produced in the United States, and you can get them in every health food store. So when you recognize where you are feeling the discomfort on the level of the personality, as we discussed with Larch, or as we discussed with anxiety, all these kinds of symptoms, you wind up picking 7 of these remedies, and you make yourself a little dropper bottle, and that becomes your personal formula. Okay, and it's something you can take 4 times a day or more as you need it. Again, following your intuition. And the kinds of things people come back and say after a week, after 3 weeks, after a month on the remedies are the following. I had one client, let's call her Sally. She was deathly afraid of elevators, and she worked on the 3rd floor of her office building. Everybody in the office knew that Sally was not going near the elevator. And they would all joke about it. She'd go up the stairs next to the elevator, and everyone would kind of, with their coffee and their lunch in their hands and their bags and books and things, they would say, "Hi, Sally," and she'd walk up and they'd go up in the elevator. It was a big joke. One day, without exaggeration, one day, maybe 2.5, 3 weeks in, after taking the remedies, she stood next to her colleagues at the elevator. And everyone looked at her and didn't want to upset the apple cart, so they didn't say anything. And then she got into the elevator, and you can imagine the looks. People are looking at each other saying, "Are we going to have a little panic attack? What's going on?" They get out of the elevator, and they couldn't hold back their comments. And they said, "Sally, do you realize that you're afraid of elevators?" And she said, "Oh yeah, you're right, I was." That's how subtle. This is the beautiful thing about Bach. It's so subtle because it works on a level that already knows who it is. Your soul knows who it is inside of you. When the Bach flower dissolves the blocks to you knowing who you are, it's not painful, it's not abrupt, doesn't disrupt your life. It just lets you be who you are. And so she was free of her fear without necessarily, she was free of her fear because that's who she truly was. Does that make sense?
These are beautiful stories. You hear about. I'm sure it works for pets too.
Oh, it's brilliant! It's extraordinary for pets.
Right. So I'm thinking about how you have to do weeks of acclimative hand training for touch, for people who are skittish, for fears of all different kinds of things. You know, we have multiple list pages in the repertory about fears and delusions. And so this is something, I mean, I'm just blown away by this. I'm going to have to really learn the 38 flowers so they can be used more in my practice. So I want to hear another. What should I say? What's got? Pam writes, I once had a suicidal young woman whose mom brought her in. She was yelling at her mom and then turning away, pulling a hoodie over her head and curling up, apologizing. She went back and forth with anger and apology. I put one drop of agrimony on her left pulse point, and she sat up, took the hoodie off, and made eye contact with me. Perfectly calm, amazing. So tell us a little bit about agrimony and how she selected that.
That's a very interesting choice. I'm fascinated by the choice of agrimony. She probably knows more about the person's case than this little explanation would tell us that would encourage her to use agrimony. They're usually tormented folks, and clearly this woman was, but usually they hide behind some repetitive, addictive, or escapist behavior. So in that regard, in this broad definition of agrimony, clearly it helped her come out of her shell, which is what agrimony would do. Mm-hmm. Agrimony is, she might have also chosen to do rescue remedy as well. And I do want to spend a minute on rescue remedy because it's the one remedy that people seem to come to Bach flowers through. Mm-hmm. It's a 5-flower formula, and I can tell you what those 5 flowers are, and even on the PowerPoint I can tell you what page they are too. We have Star of Bethlehem. I'll tell you the page on the flower point. Here we go. It would be page number 6, if somebody's got that.
Okay.
And they're calling it the emergency mix, but it's trademarked as rescue remedy. And it's got rock rose. Let's go through the 5 flowers. Rock rose is for terror. It's the feeling of just nearly getting hit by a car. It's the feeling that you're in absolute, it's terror. It's terror. So you could have this feeling after you had an event or in the middle of the event. Then you have cherry plum, which is for fear of loss of control. You could either hurt yourself or hurt someone else. And all of these flowers, I want to point out as I describe them, there's a range of application. There's an extreme case and there's a subtle case. And these are things that are useful to eventually understand. But for now, rescue remedy, you're in a crisis. That's when you use rescue remedy. And these are the kinds of issues that Bach is hoping to help resolve for you. The 3rd flower is impatience. And I think when people are in a crisis, we see a lot of impatience, don't we?
Yeah, anxiety, panic.
Sure.
Wanting things to get over, right. get to a balanced, harmonious state because things are not it's in chaos. It's where it is. Remember, we also think about aconite and arnica as first rescue emergency situations. So this is something that you can have with you.
Absolutely. And I tend to reach for the rescue a little more quickly than the aconite because it's more available, and I usually send people home with a bottle of rescue, especially because rescue can help you if you're going through a healing crisis. Mm-hmm. If you're having a homeopathic remedy and you're having a bit of an aggravation, if you take rescue during that, we find that it helps smooth things out. Because why? Why? Let's think about this. Homeopathy and Bach flower essences are speaking to the part of us that knows how to be well. And nothing goes against our highest good with homeopathy or with Bach flower essences. So that's the part of us that's being engaged. whatever help it takes along the way, it will still arrive at the same destination, because we know how to be well. I guess our life's journey is to find the tools and relationships and self-awareness and practices that help us stay there. It's kind of a spiritual journey of a life, wouldn't you say?
It is from birth to death. And so tell us, we were going through each of the
thank you for reminding me.
5 flowers in the rescue remedy. You were saying impatience is good in a crisis.
Well, these 5 remedies are part of the rescue remedy, and he has 2 more. We did the rock rose, we did the cherry plum, and the impatience, and now clematis and Star of Bethlehem are the other 2, and I'll tell you what those are good for. Clematis is for that sort of daydreamy quality, spaciness, and so it's great for a daydreaming child in school, although it's also very good for people that are in a coma. The quality can go from a very extreme to a very mild case, and clematis is basically not being there, is when you're someplace else. And and then we have Star of Bethlehem, which is for sadness and for trauma. Now,
okay, I think there might have been a question earlier up in the chat. I saw somebody saying something about Star of Bethlehem.
Sure.
Let me see. Okay, to confirm, Star of Bethlehem, which is also in Rescue Remedy, that does not antidote homeopathy. That
will not antidote.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
All right. Okay.
And if I might take a moment just to make 2 points about this question, because I think it's one of the reasons why a lot of people hesitate to employ both modalities. May I just jump in on that?
Sure.
Great. There's a quality to healing when you take a remedy, a homeopathic remedy, that has a strong emotional, psychological, personality element to it, aspect to it. Part of the healing is you become more who you are. I think Luke Klein talks about this. We become more, if we're sort of a cranky person, there's a period during our healing we become more cranky. It's it's according to Herring's law that whatever was inside has to come out at some point. And that's why the Bach flower essences are wonderful at that moment. If I have a client who is bitter from life experiences, or very sad all the time, perfect Ignatia picture, a trauma in their past, they haven't gotten over their past, and they wound up manifesting all kinds of physical symptoms. That's the perfect opportunity for a homeopathic remedy such as Ignatia. However, during the time that they're suffering with their sorrow, you bring in Star of Bethlehem, you've given them a little push-up. You've given them something they can dose themselves with so that their soul does not have to be in pain while their body heals.
It really does keep coming back to the soul energy rather than the physical. Every time I hear you repeat that thought.
I'm glad that that's coming out clearly, because I think it allows us to evaluate Bach in our lives, in our practices, appropriately. We're not talking, our minds control, the way we think controls what experiences we have. It's the world that we create for ourselves. And the soul gives us the inspiration for the creation.
Our soul plays a larger role than we realize and recognize. And I guess what you're saying is the flower essences help us to awaken to that?
I would think that's an excellent way of describing it. Dr. Bach, I mean, there are other ways to understand your soul's promptings, for sure. It does, however, every religion, every meditative practice has an aspect of awareness. And Dr. Bach translated the experiences people have to help show them where their imbalances were on a soul level. And he wasn't necessarily heavy-handedly teaching people either. The idea of this is to be so simple that you go home, if you feel a little despondent, you go home and you take gorse. You feel a little discouraged, you take some gentian. You lost your pet, you go home and you take some Star of Bethlehem. without even going into, I have a friend, maybe other homeopaths have heard this, but I have a friend who says, Lise, if the light bulb is out in the house, you don't always have to rewire the house. Just change the light bulb.
That's a really nice little analogy there.
So, because I'm always wanting to go to root cause, right? We always want to get to the bottom of things.
Right. We don't have to jiggle the whole house, shake the whole house down. Just make a little slight adjustment somewhere.
And it might, yeah, exactly. And that's why Bach is great, because at that you can do it at that level, and it's still having deep healing qualities. It's not suppressing. It's not suppression.
You know, I'm thinking that there's 38 flowers, and there's, Samuel Hahnemann used 100 remedies. So my question is, flower essences just selecting 38, how come it hasn't grown to a larger number of flowers?
These are excellent questions. Well, I think, and I can offer a discussion. I don't presume to have a perfect answer. His feeling was, since you were combining flower essences, it's something like over 2.9 million combinations that are possible. You're gonna, and I have been using the flowers since 1986. Is that almost 30 years? I've never seen an opportunity or an experience that couldn't be addressed on the level of personality. Mm-hmm. There are other flower essences out there. The Flower Essence Society, there are several groups of flower essences. I do not work with them. I have experimented with them. I have used them for myself to sort of see what the feeling is. And the feeling that I get is I'm being given something with those essences. I'm sure there are plenty of FES people out there that are going to criticize my experience or tell me that there's a different way to look at it. But it felt like I was being given something rather than blocks were being dissolved. Mm-hmm. So Dr. Bach has 38 flowers because he feels that these resonate on the same level as the human soul, and the right combination will melt the snow that covers the flower of your soul. Can you picture that? You see a flower under the snow. If the right kind of vibration comes in, it'll melt that snow, and then you get to be who you are. You haven't been given anything new. Right.
It's uncovering the cloak that's hiding the real you. It's really fascinating, and I have to think hard about the combination. You're saying you make a combination of
up to seven
flowers, and those can interact in such a way that it can create just overall general healing. It's really fascinating to me because I recently heard the story on NPR about our sense of smell. Is it our sense of smell, where we thought that, okay, we can smell maybe 100 different or 1,000 different, but we can smell and differentiate 100,000 different smells.
Wow.
So that's a great thing. Go out and look for that article.
I will. That's a very interesting. I haven't read it.
So when we're taking these flower essences, I want to differentiate it between colognes.
Okay. Thank you for that. There's no smell.
There's no smell at all.
It's perfume for the soul, but not perfume for the body.
Because we think about making perfumes from flower sources a lot of times.
Of course. It makes perfect sense. Well, you bring up, I'm going to jump off of that because there's a few things that will be useful for folks to know from that comment. I was remiss by not indicating they're prepared homeopathically. They're prepared by succussion and dilution. Dr. Bach was literally traveling around taking dewdrops off of plants, putting it in a larger body of water, succussing it, and diluting it. And so there's no original substance left. There's no twigs. There's no scents. There's no essential oils. Okay. And he diluted it with cognac. He preserved it with cognac because when the pipette touches your mouth from the dropper bottle, you can transport bacteria back into the original bottle, and that can cloud the water. But in order to avoid that, we use cognac, or I use glycerin with folks that are a little alcohol sensitive. And if people are very sensitive, I even encourage them to put it in a spray bottle, and they can just spray the room that they're in. And that could even, and that brings great benefits. And a nice little trick for practitioners of all types, because we pick up the energy of our clients. Have you all had that experience?
Yeah.
Someone walked in, and the whole room changed, or especially for body workers who are dealing in a very intimate way with their clients. I have a nice little, I'm not the only one. I use a spray bottle, and I put crabapple and walnut in it. And walnut, so let's talk about some fun formulas, right? So walnut is for the protection from outside influences used this way. And the crabapple is for cleansing the air. It's for cleansing the energy. So I have psychic clients. I have clients who are psychics who spray their phone with this combination. I have massage therapist clients who spray the room with this, and this is a nice way to clean their aura and to move on to the next person without taking on the energy.
Without going to refresh and sprinkle wash your hands and face and all of that, which is something that some people might do.
Absolutely, and sometimes you just don't have time for it. And if someone's already got you sort of wrapped in their drama, it's sometimes easy just to grab a bottle. I know practitioners who will put 4 drops of Rescue Remedy from the original bottle they get from the health food store and put that in a glass of water and sip that during
Can you overdose on these? I mean, if you're taking Rescue Remedy every single day, I mean, what happens?
Okay, good question. The answer is no. If you think about it, let's try to think about the image of a flower under snow. My website, that's my logo on my website. Mm-hmm. I found this image so inspirational. If you're just melting the snow, the sunshine that melts the snow, when the snow is gone, what does the sunshine do? Does it hurt the flower that grows up out of this in the spring out of the snow? It doesn't. Light disperses into light. It will not have a negative effect. The question, though, about can you take too much Rescue Remedy? Mm-hmm. And this goes back for those of us who understand the difference between chronic and acute concerns. Rescue Remedy is really considered an acute remedy. It's for the crisis. By extrapolation, if you feel you're always in crisis, don't we have to look a little deeper? Mm-hmm. Don't we need to ask, okay, what's happening in your life that makes you get to the point of crisis? And then we're talking about a chronic condition. And that's when a personal formula is very well indicated. Many people give up on Bach because they're using Rescue, and after a while it stops working. Well, it stops working because they're not in an acute crisis. They're in a chronic state of crisis. And that we have other ways of helping.
Wow, I didn't realize that. You're really teaching me a lot about these Bach flower essences, because I didn't realize you're supposed to mix them and make these combinations, and that you can personalize them to the need of the individual.
And it's exciting, isn't it?
It is exciting. How long does it take to become proficient and knowledgeable about these?
Well, the Bach Center offers 3 levels of certification. The level 1 you can take online, and that gives you a chance to sort of know the 38 flowers. And knowing how to use them for yourself really depends on how carefully you listen to yourself. I think most practitioners in most modalities have experienced the frustration. They want to heal them. They want to help themselves the way they help other people. But it's hard to give yourself a homeopathic remedy. Bach flowers, I've come up with sort of a trick. I will write down, like in a journal, what's going on for me. I'll draw a column down the left, and then I'll have a conversation on the page between so I'm looking at it, not how I feel anymore, but the case that I now have on the page, and I'll see what flowers are indicated, strictly as a paper case. I treat myself like a paper case. And that helps me get through. We also have little brochures. The Bach Center gives out little brochures on self-questionnaires All of this is available. I can send links for everyone. If you want to come to my website, I'll send you links. Send me an email, and you can definitely do your own sort of little questionnaire to help you figure it out.
Okay, I do want to give folks your website. I know that it is linked on Homeopathy World Community. It is www.homeopathyhealingarts.com. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I'll put that on the chat for those folks who are in there. We do have an incredibly large number of people who are with us today. I want to thank you so much. This must be a topic of interest. Hey, does anybody want to call and ask a question? Computers 2K voice on Skype. Just ring a ding and we'll get it. I'm sure I have not picked up on all the chat things, and I haven't been able to answer all of those questions.
Debbie, let me just follow up on that question. How long does it become proficient?
Yeah.
To become a registered practitioner, that the Bach Center will tell the world that they believe in you and in your education. It probably takes a few years. Level 1, level 2 and level 2 are weekends with no homework. And then level 3, you have to have a certain amount of experience, and you have about 6 to 8 months of follow up. And because they're not offered one after the other, you kind of have to wait for them to come around.
Okay. That's great. And it's okay to practice both of them simultaneously, homeopathy and with these flower essences. I know that Dr. Kubushan, who's going to be a speaker coming up on Health In soon, is asking this question. And yes, you are a certified homeopath as well as chef. I wonder how that came into being. That's another story, I guess.
That's another story. But I honestly, I wasn't making food for people to make them sick. I was always aware of using food as a healing modality. Mm-hmm. And early on, I realized that people were telling me their life stories. And I started creating something called Delicious to Feed, where I helped people with their motivation through the Bach flower essences. Because changing a lifestyle, changing a diet, it often, if you can't, you have to grit your teeth to get through the hard parts, and you have to re-engage your motivation at every stage of difficulty. And the Bach flowers are just match made in heaven. It's just it's as though you're being slightly tapped on the shoulder. Every time you take the dropper bottles, I touch my clients. I say, "Can I touch you?" And they usually say yes. Mm-hmm. And I say, it's as though an angel's on the top of your shoulder. And don't mean to sound too, woo woo about it, but it's as though
you've already gone there.
But we all know that we're more than what we see. So the part of us that is connected to our inspiration, our intuition, our spirit, our soul, it sort of taps you on the shoulder and says you can do this. Because you're actually being reminded when you take the remedies. On some energetic level, you're being reminded you already know how to be you.
We have to get back to that true essence, but it does take work. I can tell you that for sure.
And with the flowers are a really nice companion for that work.
Mm-hmm. And I'm interjecting my own question. I know that Dr. Kubushan is asking about the aspen remedy, and if that's okay.
Okay, I can tell you what that. I can tell you.
And I guess I also want to ask you: can you become dependent upon these? I mean, oh, I feel this way. Now I'm going to go run and take this flower essence, and all of your day, constantly, you're dependent upon them instead of just depending on yourself. How does that?
Well,
come into
Sally
play?
Never took Mimulus again.
Oh, okay.
Because once it's the uncorruptible, it's the aspect of our souls is uncorruptible. Our vital force, our soul, our chi, it may change in quality. Our vital force and our chi may change during our quality of our life. We get more, we get less at certain periods of our life. However, your soul is always your soul. So whoever you are, when it is remembered, when a person who needs larch, which is the person with the pet store, the early example I gave, when they're reminded that they are capable of fulfilling their dreams because their dream, their inspiration is perfectly matched to their capacity. When that awareness comes to the surface, that's healed. The snow, unless new snow comes on. If new snow comes on, here's a great example of how this is a dynamic system. Let's say you've conquered the whole confidence thing and you've got the pet store, but then you start to lose confidence. Now I want to know why. Now I want to know what's going on. Are you talking to some people? And if all of a sudden you're listening to other people's negative talk, then I want to give you Centauri, because Centauri is the flower for the people pleasers, the people that say yes to everyone else before they say yes to themselves. We have a flower for that, Centauri. It wouldn't work to continue to give you Larch if Larch is not the problem that you have.
Can you tell me again what is Larch?
Larch is the flower for self-confidence.
Okay, self-confidence.
I have a great example to help explain this point you brought up, which is an excellent point about the dependency overusing them. If a stockbroker who's making millions based because he's following his gut, if he knows his intuition and his confidence makes him a great stockbroker, does he need Larch?
No, he has the self-confidence.
There you go. So you can't take too much
but
of it. But
he needs something.
That's right. He does. He does need something. And we might want to presume that he's fearful, that he has no identity unless he's successful. That might be a low self-esteem sort of thing. And that might be crabapple, or it might be mimulus.
Okay.
Again, going a little deeper, we get to root cause.
Then you switch over.
Then you switch over.
Okay.
It's dynamic. Okay, go ahead.
We have Gabrielle Selman is asking his Dr. Botch's 7 original remedies. Is that correct? Was there 7 original, and are the rescue remedies 5 of them?
Okay. I have to look at a piece of paper for that. Dr. Bach had originally 7 categories of concern for people,
Okay.
which actually, that's a whole other topic, because those were matched to his bowel nosodes. It's a whole nother fascinating conversation.
Okay.
Of the 5 rescue remedy, I don't have it in front of me, but they're not part of I don't believe they're part of the original 5. A part of the original 7. But the 7 that they're talking about is the 7 categories of people's personality imbalances and disruptions.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
We had a PowerPoint earlier today that I could have shared that with you.
Don't worry about it.
Okay, we'll have to.
Hey, we're going to figure out a remedy, a flower essence for you today. No worries, be happy.
The one that would probably be, white chestnut. White chestnut's a flower of when you sort of go over, you can't leave things behind. So if I'm still bothered by the fact that our PowerPoint didn't get straightened out today, I might have a little white chestnut going on. 100% accurate. I'll accept the criticism or suggestion.
It wasn't. It was just
No, I know.
It was recognizing that each of us, everywhere, is dealing with something. You know, we all constantly are making adjustments, like we're riding a bicycle, that in order to keep balance.
Debbie, I love that you said that.
Okay, go with it.
I love that you said that, because it's a testimony to our dynamic aspect of our engagement with life. It brings up such a big topic. When we're healed, are we fixed? When we've got that, because of course this is a big confusion in homeopathy circles, the constitutional remedy, people walk around thinking they never need a different kind of remedy. The idea that life is this sort of in and out, ebb and flow, dynamic relationship with our experiences here, and stuff comes up.
And God, I'm going to throw God into the mix.
He or she's welcome, right? Let's.
Our Creator is not going to let you just sit idly by. You're going to have something new thrown at you every single day.
You mean we have to do stuff here?
Yeah,
we have stuff to do?
We have a mission. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. I'm throwing this. Can you read that?
Can I answer that question about aspen? Because I wanted to give Dr. Bach's quote. I know we only have 10 minutes left.
Okay.
But I think that aspen's a great flower for people to know about if they haven't already thought about it. It's for vague, unknown fears for which there can be given no explanation, no reason. It is a terror that something awful is going to happen, even though it is unclear what exactly. These vague, inexplicable fears may haunt by day or night. Sufferers may often be afraid to tell their troubles to others. It's that feeling of the other shoe's going to drop.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, this is a big component of modern day life kinds of anxiety. I'm doing everything right. I've got everything happening. But all of a sudden, I get a cancer diagnosis. But I was eating the right diet.
Right.
People have a fear of certain things. We have a remedy carcinosum, people, for folks that seem to be talking about or have aspects of cancer in their conversation. And any kind of...
Hey, do we have a remedy for somebody who's always humorous?
Acrimony. They're hiding behind.
Okay, mister.
They're hiding behind. And also, acrimony is great for people who drink, for people who tell class clown who's really hiding a sorrowful feeling inside, people that do computer games, anything that's escapism.
And what about pouting?
That could, if the person is resentful, and they're just being passive aggressive, it could be either chicory or willow.
Chicory
or willow. Chicory is sort of the oh, don't worry about me.
Don't worry about me.
Don't worry about me. I'll just sit here in the corner in the rain,
Self-effacing.
And the martyr, the passive aggressive martyr.
Oh boy, we got a lot to learn. I mean,
it's so much fun because it's so empowering. It's like reading the heart. I mean, I hate to say this, but it's sort of like reading a horoscope and you go, "Oh my God, that's me." Mm-hmm. Oh my God, that's me. This happens a lot with Bach. Oh my God, that's me.
Right, and then you switch to another flower.
Or another combination. And sometimes when you change a combination, some flowers will remain because there are two things that we address. We address a mood and a type. A mood clearly is a more passing phase, and a type is more of a personality kind of structure to who you are. A lot of homeopaths and people that are interested in healthcare, if we walk around feeling like no one's listening to us and we have to sort of shake everyone and say, this is what you really have to understand, this is the story.
Okay, what's that?
That's vervain. And
vervain.
I've taken plenty of vervain.
Oh boy, that's the one that a lot of people I know need.
Thank you. And I think we suffer. And the beautiful thing about vervain I want to share with you is that when a vervain can sort of pull it back in and not be at people so much to tell them how to live their lives, when they pull it back in, what happens is you become an inspiration to the other people that are sort of going like this, I can't listen anymore. And they follow because they now have the space in themselves to see what the right thing to do is. Higher selves communicate with higher selves.
Right.
No one's going to
doing that.
What's good for you is not going to be bad for me.
We have a question in the chat from Catherine about willow.
Okay. What's the question?
What's it good for?
Oh, willow is for resentment.
Resentment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Willow, the deposit, because the
willow moves in the wind.
The willow moves in the wind.
Yes, and it has branches that are flowing down to the ground.
Well, the willow's actually using this as a keynote.
And it's an aspirin. You get aspirin from it.
Yes. What's beautiful about that image to describe willow is that other people's actions, the wind, affects their it affects their motions. Okay. So a willow has already surrendered their self-determination.
Okay.
And they become resentful for that. And a willow imbalance, because don't forget, every one of these is sort of there's a positive and a negative to each one of these vibrations. The blockage is the negative, and the fulfilled is the positive is when the block is gone. Willow will actually find their inner strength to determine their own choices in life. They're no longer angry that other people made bad choices for them because they're making their own choices.
Oh, that's good.
Isn't that beautiful?
A lot of people can hold on to that. For instance, children growing up and being told what to do, take it on face value that parent knows best what's I'm going to be a doctor or an engineer or whatever it is, and that's not really that child's soul energy who wants to do something, play music or do something else.
Boy, was that a mouthful. Boy, was that a mouthful.
Go with it.
Okay. The willow, that's a point in people's development when they realize it's them who gets to choose for themselves. That's a whole other conversation. But I love what you brought up because you're 100% right. And guess what? For folks who are actually struggling with their true vocation, there is a flower for that.
Oh.
And the flower is wild oat.
Okay, good, because people have been talking about the oats in the chat, and I know that it's good for nursing moms for lactation.
It's fascinating, isn't it? And I'm going to throw something. We have 4 minutes left. I'm going to throw something into the chat that I hope that we get a chance to talk about this another time. Is Dr. Bach, and there are some practitioners in other countries who are using the remedies for their ability to have an effect physically on the person. Now, this is not what we talk about in the United States, and this is not part of the Code of Ethics in Dr. Bach, because he wanted us to focus on the simplest to allow for the most benefit to most people. And he even went so far as to burning all of his papers. He didn't want people to get distracted. He didn't want people's egos to make it more complicated. This is simple. This is simple. This is 38 flowers. Make your mixtures, live your life, have fun. That was basically his philosophy about his healing aspect of things.
I love this. Now, can the flowers, are they special flowers? Because we have a question about even vegetables produce flowers. So are any of them like carrots? Because I have a spray that is a carrot seed, which is just delightful that I use. Mm-hmm. So are any of the essences from vegetable flowers?
Well, crabapple has a fruit.
Crabapple is a tree.
It has a fruit.
And has a
flowers
fruit.
Sweet chestnut, I don't think they has a
chestnut
pine,
is a tree.
Pine. Well, I had to say no, but there are some of the flowers that do come from fruit bearing or nut bearing
fruits
plants.
And nuts.
So we have walnuts and nut. We have pine, which makes pine nuts.
Right.
Vine is made from grapevines.
Grapevine. Okay.
Wild oat is with oats. So there doesn't seem to be, and vervain is used as an herb very regularly. Gentian is used in a lot of as a digestive. So there's not just for personality, but the plant kingdom. My goodness, this is this is years of work. And I'm going to share with you something my mother once said to me. She says, oh, yes, sometimes people just come out with these things that make you feel like, oh, God, I couldn't have spent 6 months and figured out the same statement. But she one day said, plants, they're just so uplifting. Flowers are just so uplifting. And it's interesting. The flower is the height of the reproduction of a plant. And it is the point where one becomes two or millions. And there is something otherworldly about it, how we reproduce, how flowers come from a weed. There's something evolutionary about it, and I think that Bach's understanding of his 38 flowers that he discovered they had a very strong energy that responded to us. And you keep bringing up the idea of these smells and these scents.
Yeah, I want to ask you about roses.
We're drawn to that.
I want to add, we don't have too much time, but roses, is there a rose essence?
Not in the, yes, there's rock rose and wild rose. There are two. There's rock rose and wild rose.
Okay. So it's not the kind that you expect your spouse to bring to you to uplift you, is what I was thinking, that a lot of people like that.
Well, the wild rose are wild roses.
Okay.
And the rock rose, I believe, are the roses that grow very close to the ground. Mm-hmm. That can be very small and very beautiful.
Mm-hmm. So we can find the beauty in the world through the flowers, which is so true. And if anybody is on Facebook and sees those close-ups of photographs of flowers, who is there that just doesn't get drawn into it and loves the beauty of the flower? And the colors are incredible. So
And we're complex beings, we're drawn, however we're drawn in is the universe's way of getting our attention.
Well, we are out of time. I have to thank you so very much. I'm going to tell some announcements. First, for those who want to learn more about the Bach flower essences and remedies, homeopathyhealingarts.com is Lisa's website. And I know you're going to be back with us again.
Oh, that's great news.
Did I just let you know?
I'm thrilled.
And also, I want to give some other announcements. One, on Homeopathy World Community at the top of the page, there is coming up May 5th through the May 18th. Every day, 12 days, is going to be free lectures by experts on healing diabetes. 40 experts and 50 presentations for those days. Click that banner and you can register. You'll also get a free ebook when you do that. Complete Dynamics is the program that I use for folks who want to study materia medical or put together cases and just learn. It's very reasonably priced. There's a link on Homeopathy World Community. Sunshine Sciences, we talked about the sun today. And if you're not living in an area of the world that gets a lot of sunshine, you can bring that sunlight indoors with full spectrum lighting, 10% coupon if you put the word health in there. There's plenty of Narayana books on Homeopathy World Community. Take a look at that. And there's the gluten-free summit also for the people who have missed out when that was originally produced. I want to thank everyone. We had an incredible number of people on the chat today. Let's do this every week on Monday at 11. Hey, what's coming up next week? April 7th, Dr. Deepak Sharma, my regular co-host, is going to talk about renal stones. Then I'm going to skip a week for the holidays. April 28th, Dr. Kubushan is going to be talking about fears and phobias, which is really close to the flower essences. And then Dr. Sharma will be back again on May 5th talking about back pain. On Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, USA, Alan Phillips is on Blog Talk Radio, Homeopathy World Community, and Freedomizer Radio, talking about vaccinations and your rights in the United States, current events about vaccines, constantly new information coming out. Maybe there's even some flower essences that are good for vaccine injury and damage. She's nodding. Yes, there must be. Oh, that will be a wonderful topic. And so I just want to send out tons of waves of awareness and lots of love. Big hugs to everybody. And that's get to your soul's mission. Hey, Marilyn's going to be coming up at 1 o'clock talking about the hummingbird energy. So stay tuned. Bye-bye.
Tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, Health In with Debbie Bruck, Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Lessons of Vietnam with NCVVI members, The Tanya Love Show, Reawaken Your Brilliance with Julie Seibert, and if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it at www.nissancommunications.com. Sponsored by Atomus.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters for professionals. ThatVidBlasterGuy.com, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.